Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are back with our first look series here in patch 10.5, bringing you a first look at Tier 6 Premium British battleship, battlecruiser, HMS Repulse. That's right, Repulse is finally coming to World of Warships. I know there are a ton of you Teaboos out there that are excited about this ship, because she is just like, she's kind of Hood is one of the only British battlecruisers kind of currently in the game, and now we're going to get another here in Repulse. Now, I'm kind of cracking jokes at Repulse's expense about the whole battlecruiser thing. There's a lot of people, myself included, who believe that battlecruisers probably deserve their own kind of class designation here in World of Warships, but unfortunately, we don't have that yet, so we are where we are, and at the moment, Repulse is considered a battleship. But let's drop all the fancy nomenclature and have a look at the stats of the ship and kind of see if we can kind of suss out what we think she's going to do well and what we think she's not going to do well. Remember, guys, can't show you gameplay. I can talk about the ship endlessly. We can look at her in port. I can show you the armor layout and everything. But, of course, I cannot play the ship on camera and show you that for quite some time. So we'll just have to make do with what we've got. Starting out here, we're looking at hit points. You see there are 56,100 HP. This is quite robust for Tier 6. Not best in tier, not worst in tier. The Japanese basically still kind of top out this tier at 58,000 and change. I'm looking at you, Issei. I'm looking at you, Mutsu, right? Fuso's 57,000. Arizona's 57,000. Ismail's basically 56,000. So you're near the high end of the range for the tier, but you are not best in tier. This is blessedly not Andrea Doria, who is at the bottom of the barrel. So you've got a lot of health to play with. The trick is, of course, you're going to have to learn to manage it well, and we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. 16% torpedo protection. Again, nothing to get excited about. This is not quite worst in tier, but it's pretty damn close. So, yeah, don't be driving her towards angry smoke clouds with torpedo armed destroyers in them. Let's just put that out there. That's probably not going to end well for you, okay? Armor layout. Now, here's where we're going to spend a little bit of a non-zero amount of time talking about Repulse's quirks, all right? Because Repulse is essentially very much like Hood. Her kind of cousin up at Tier 7 is very much a kind of battle cruiser style. The British, and somebody in the comments is going to be able to talk about this in far more detail than I will. So I'm going to give you my weak layman's knowledge, and then somebody who knows the Royal Navy inside and out can fill you guys in on all the details. But the short version is, Repulse has essentially got some of her armor stripped away in exchange for more speed and bigger guns than many other ships of this era and size would have had, all right? So as we peel away the layers, we're not going to find a ton to like about her armor scheme, but we'll talk about it so you understand kind of the challenges you're going to be up against when you face this ship. Obviously, with 16mm extremities, this is not a ship that is going to be bouncing anybody's battleship shells in a while pushing or while kiting. So you just throw that out of your mind right now. Okay. Now I will say I'm trying to think what the threshold is for 14. There might be some 14-inch armed battleships you'll come across, right? But you will find some 15s, some 16s that will not bounce off of this. Okay. Let's peel away the torpedo bulge. You can see there she's actually got a fairly healthy torpedo bulge. It's kind of funny for her to have one modeled this nicely in this fat and for it to be so largely ineffective when you consider only a 16% torpedo bulge. Let's get rid of that. All right, so now let's talk about this. For starters, Repulse's belt armor is here. It's actually hidden beneath the torpedo bulge, okay? Her technical waterline belt is right there at 229 millimeters. Now that is bad. It's not quite worst in tier, but it's literally within a couple of millimeters of being so, right? Dunkirk is technically less at 225, but basically you're looking at that kind of armor here, okay? So Repulse and Dunkirk, I would argue, are almost kind of similar sides of the same coins. They're these middle tier interwar battle cruiser kinds of styles where they shed armor to pick up speed to try to maintain some of the gun caliber that they already had in the existing design. So you will not be bouncing battleship shells broadside off this belt at range. Okay, just know that going in. As you angle in, they'll probably pin the bow, and you probably will be able to bounce them off the belt at certain angles at certain ranges. But here's what you're going to have to contend against, guys. Look at some of this casemate armor. Look at the angles. Right, this is almost like Yamato angle here, looking at this you're just asking to get full penned right here. Now, the Barbettes are only 178 here. I mean, that feels kind of noteworthy. I kind of question that. I mean, the frontal plates here, 230, that's probably going to bounce most of the things you're going to run across, but even the barbettes feel a little on the weak side. Let me peel away the casemate armor. Let's just purely look at the Citadel armor. Actually, get rid of all of this garbage. All right, so here's your Citadel, okay? You do have a bit of a kind of faux turtleback going on here, but I would not let that get you into confidence of getting into, brawling range or anything like that, right? So you got a little bit of a sloped armor here. You see 50 mils up forward, looks like 102 around the magazines. But I just this weird Citadel plate worries me. I just feel like you have so much potential between with the casemate back, between this casemate chunk here, between the barbette, and between this is actual Citadel armor right here. Yeah, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about this armor scheme when brawling. This feels like a Citadel or a full pin disaster waiting to happen going up against somebody with 16-inch guns. So just be aware that this scheme exists, and when the ship releases, and if you decide to pick one up, play around with it. Be aware this is a thing. Look at her armor geometry. Familiarize yourself with what you're up against, and see if you can play around it. She does have, of course, 76 mils back on what would basically be the steering gear room. We talk about that sometimes. But again, nothing to get really excited about in her armor scheme. This is a ship that's got a fairly robust health pool, but you are going to have to manage her health very, very cautiously. Maneuverability and concealment. Now, here's where it starts to get good, right? 31.7 knots. Repulse is the fastest battleship in Tier 6, right? She blows everybody else away. This is 2 knots faster than Dunkirk. 2 and change. This is 2 knots faster than Normandy. This is 3 knots faster than Ismail, okay? And it's going to get even better in a minute. We'll talk about why. But this number is significant. This ship can get around the board like no other Tier 6 battleship can. She can kite effectively. She can kite when she's bottom tiered effectively. That's not something you can normally say for a mid-tier battleship, right? Most mid-tier battleships, once they get into trouble, it's like, well, I'm here, I can't get away, I might as well go all in. Repulse does have the speed to give you the option to attempt to escape, to extract yourself from a bad situation if you think you can manage it, okay? And her gun angles actually will allow you to do some of that while you're still firing, and we'll highlight that in just a moment. 860 meters in the turning circle is quite bad. This is quite bad, right? This is actually worse than Tier. So, again, she's really fast, but as a result, this turning circle and her overall length, that I guess just does not add up to a very maneuverable ship. This is going to be something to keep in mind when we talked about that, the torpedo protection earlier. That ship doesn't handle all that well. One of the nice things about mid-tier battleships, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I can't believe I'm issuing any praise to mid-tier battleships in World of Warships, because I just don't enjoy them, but in general, one of the nicer things about mid-tier battleships is they tend to be so slow and have such, compact-ish turning circles that when you find yourself getting, torpedoes in the face, you actually can do a decent job of dodging many of them. You have a little bit of reaction time. You're not moving that fast. Your turning circle is compact enough that you can do something about it. Repulse does not really feel like she's going to suffer from this, right? Like, we're getting up to near Iowa speed and near Iowa turning circle, right? She doesn't have Iowa's overall length, but she also doesn't have Iowa's armor scheme or torpedo protection. So there's a lot of caveats here. So you got to be careful. Like if you're playing this in a match and there's 4 destroyers and you figure out eventually that you're on the flank with 3 of them, it's probably a good time to try and be somewhere else, because you're not going to be able to dodge that torpedo soup forever. 14.4 on the rudder shift is it's not worse than Tier. It's not best in Tier. It's let's say it's a little worse than average, and I think I'm even being maybe a little generous there. It's probably very middle of the road, right? She's going to handle like a battleship. Just know that going in. Concealment. Now you're seeing 14 detection on the surface. That's with her permanent camo. Her base detection is 14.4. That does match her for Queen Elizabeth. So essentially, by the time you fully rig this ship for stealth, she's going to come in around 12 and change. That's pretty typical. There's a lot of battleships in that range at Tier 6. I'm looking at you, Arizona, New Mexico, Warspite. I'm sorry, 12.6. Yeah, 12.6 for her detection. Apologies. Obviously, it matches QE. Even Andrea Doria, as stealthy as she is not significantly better than this. Only about a half kilometer. Bayern is in this range, right? So this is pretty typical of Tier 6 battleships is what I'm getting, right? You're not getting anything fancy for stealth here, okay? Aerial detection, again, with the camo here, you see is, we got 9.6. Yeah, that's reasonable, okay? So, speaking of aerial, we'll talk about her A briefly before we start talking about the main battery, because the main battery is where the real meat of this discussion is. She's got one flak puff going up at 4 kilometers, and then she has really bad AA, guys. Like, even for Tier 6, this is garbage. This is absolute trash. You really, really don't want to see numbers this low, because Tier 6 is a place where you're regularly going to see carriers, right? And again, this is not worst in tier. You know, I mean, Mutsu exists, right? Fuso exists, but it's quite low. It's quite low. And you look at those ranges are terrible. Now, if you know your history, you know that Repulse was very much sent to the bottom as a result of sustained aerial attack by the Imperial Japanese Navy in the South Pacific. So this shouldn't shock you that her AA is not going to stand up to the test of time to protect her. But it is definitely a noteworthy thing that you need to understand when you're looking at this ship. If there's a carrier in the game, try not to draw his attention. Be very, very quiet, and maybe he won't see you. That's probably the best you can hope for here. Okay. All right. So let's talk about her main battery. This is where you know, people are like, all right, what am I? I've got all this speed. I've given up armor. What am I getting in return? Well, guys, what you're getting is Queen Elizabeth guns. That's what you're getting. If you've driven the Tier 6 tech tree British battleship HMS Queen Elizabeth, that's what you're getting. These are the same guns. These are the exact same guns, literally down to the shell. The shell, the penetration, the fuse timers, the ballistics, the shell velocities, identical, 100% the same. The difference here is that you see there that main battery range. Repulse has a nearly a 20-kilometer main battery range at Tier 6. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy. You generally don't find this out of Tier 6 battleships. In fact, QE herself is only like, what is she, like 16 or 17? Let me look at this real quick. 17 and change, right? So this is nearly 3 kilometers longer than QE's main battery gets for the same guns, okay? What does that translate into? Well, is Repulse going to be a sniper? I don't think so. That 214 dispersion ellipse you're looking at is more or less the same kind of dispersion ellipse you're looking at QE. It's just extended out further, right? QE's dispersion ellipse isn't this bad, but she has less range, right? So the dispersion ellipse is naturally going to be smaller down at her maximum range. And here we're looking at 214. That's not amazing. And again, you're only putting 6 shells downrange on a 30-second reload. So your DPM, your that all important, you know, stat that the min-maxers love to latch onto, your damage per minute, is going to feel lower because you're putting only 6 shells downrange, and your reload is not any faster than anybody else's right now. Remember, guys, Repulse is just now entering super testing. All of this is subject to change, all right? So just keep that in mind. But for our first look purposes here, her DPM does not look all that amazing. So, one of the things, the quirks I want to highlight, because the other Tier 6 British battleship doesn't have this problem, okay? HMS Warspite has different fuse length timers on her AP shells, well, on all her shells really, but most notably this impacts her AP shells than Queen Elizabeth and Repulse do for theirs, okay? Warspite's fuse timer is nearly 0.03 of a second, okay? What that means is when you're firing those AP shells at battleships, for example, and sometimes some cruisers, certainly heavy cruisers, they have that little extra bit of time to sink in, to penetrate before the shell detonates, before the fuse tells the explosive, hey, it's time to go off, okay? The British AP, battleship AP, one of the reasons it feels so bad, right, at so many ranges with these shell velocities is that because the fuse timers are very short, like 15 thousandths of a second. So about half of that of what Warspites are. So they want to detonate quicker, which means that when you're firing shells this slow at something with a lot of armor at long range, not only is your penetration go down, you're more likely to ricochet the shell. If you do manage to catch an angle and pen something, the shell's not going to go very far before it fuses and detonates. So you might get a full pen if you're lucky. More commonly, you're probably going to get maybe an overpen, maybe something kind of garbagey. You're not like firing AP at long range with Queen Elizabeth just never feels good against many targets, even cruisers, right? Even cruisers, light cruisers may be the exception. They're squishy enough you could probably get in there and find the soft bits quick enough, right? But the fuse timers here is not something we talk about a lot. It's also not something that the port mechanics will not tell you this. This is one of the frustrations that I have with Wargaming over the years, right? They bury so much of this, what amounts to be really critical information to understand how a ship's going to perform, into parts of the interface that you're not shown. You're not shown in anywhere. You have to go to a third-party stat aggregator site to see these numbers. Things like flood chance on torpedoes are another good example. And so when you're trying to compare this ship to, like, again, the other Tier 6 premium is Warspite, they look like the same guns on paper. They will not perform like the same guns in game, and you need to understand that. Okay, so Warspite is a ship that is a more traditional battleship in the vein of the other nations. She will play that way, but Repulse is going to play more like Queen Elizabeth with how her guns perform, and that's important to understand. Let's look at her consumables. Okay, there's some things to like here. We've got, of course, ship in World of Warships, comes with damage control party. Standard battleship heel. This is not, I repeat, this is not some kind of fancy British, print a new ship heel. This is the same heel that every other Tier 6 battleship gets. She does have aircraft facilities. Unfortunately, they're limited to spotting aircraft. She cannot take a fighter squadron, but she does get speed boost. She gets engine boost. And look at that. You'll note a typical engine boost is 8%. This is the fancy special 15% engine boost that only a few ships in the game have access to right now. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. That means that when you put a speed flag on this thing, let's play with this for a minute. Let's go back over here. Let's throw a Sierra mic on this thing. That turns her speed up to Iowa speed, right? 33 knots, okay? Now I come back over here. I push my button for 15% more speed. That's going to be 3.3, 1.6, another 5 knots. This ship will do almost over 38 knots at Tier 6 when you push that engine boost button. That's going to feel really, really interesting. And you are going to absolutely just shock somebody, right? You're going to shock somebody. It's interesting to realize, like, this is something that I feel like is really going to help Repulse out when she's bottom tier, right? When she's down tiered in the game, this is going to give her the kind of tactical flexibility that most other Tier 6 battleships could only dream of. She can find herself on a flank, and her captain can assess the situation and go, we're outnumbered here. This is bad. This is just bad in general. We're out. I'm out of here. I'm gone, right? And off you go, right? No big deal. You can push this button and just jet. Or conversely, you can look at a weak flank on the opposing team and go, man, we've killed their battleships. It's time to push. It's time to get up in the face of these cruisers and try and steamroll them. And you can do so very, very quickly. And you look at the duration. It lasts for 3 minutes on a 90-second reload. Interesting. So Repulse, to me, is a ship that is going to reward proper positioning. And when I say proper positioning, I also have to include that to mean the ability to evaluate your position and decide that it's not good and go be somewhere else. That's a skill that not many players in World of Warships have really mastered, if I'm honest. And I think it's something that is very noteworthy when we look here at Repulse. Anyway, guys, this has been a bit of a longer one, but Repulse, I think, earns it. She is kind of one of these premiums that everybody's been kind of clamoring for a while. She's finally on her way. That's our first look. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands. Be safe, and I'll catch you next time.